Hello, everyone. My name is Audie, and I'm one of the leaders of the Russia and Eurasia Club. And I would love to introduce Dr. Vitaly Kozyrev, who is a distinguished professor of political science and international studies at Endicott College in Massachusetts, as well as an associate in research at the Fairbank Center for Chinese Studies at Harvard. Today's topic, as you know, is Cold War 2.0 and the prospect of a Russia-China's condominium in Russia. We'll be focusing on East-West polarity, as well as the inverted security paradigm and the initiation of a new geoeconomic corridor. And we could start now.
Thank you very much. Thank you, the organizers, the Fletcher Eurasia Club and the Eurasia Studies Program. So it's a real privilege. I've been, collaborating with the Tufts and the Fletcher School, especially probably more than 15 years already. And I would say that I will tell you that I have learned a lot. We've been very close by at North Shore. So I've developed, was invited in 2007 to develop the international studies program there and the Endicott College. And it was a very, sanguine and optimistic period of time when everybody was living in the era of globalization. So all my syllabi were focused on the global village and with thinking globally and just the end of history, something like this. And now we are fortunately have to revise all my syllabi and just speak about war, conflict, and the genre of geopolitics and the great power politics. So and which actually sometimes make students nervous about the future, especially New England students who actually used to live in a little bit bubble, saying everything's fine, need to actually make our career. But now it's those disturbing news, especially with regard to America's positioning in the world and America's foreign policy and challenges facing America are really now on the agenda. So I'm very happy that you found some time to come here. So yes, I have a couple of thoughts, a couple of information, piece of information about myself. So my background, I was among the first students from the Soviet Union travel, was educated as a fighter of the American imperialism. So for already more than 20 years, I've been studying and teaching how to actually, extend and exercise American imperialism. So which is very interesting. And then, but my focus was on China. So I was among the first students to travel to China. And then I was studying mostly the patterns of modernization of China. So why China actually was successful in modernizing itself, whereas Russia turned out to be less successful, frankly speaking. And then I was invited to a project with the Harvard and Harvard Central Party School. And that's how I just ended up being in America, just participating in this project. And then I collaborated for many, many years with Naval War College while teaching at different institutions in the United States, including Amherst College and Yale, the Yale Macmillan Center. And in Yale Macmillan Center, they asked me to actually teach a course on international conflicts, and it was 2005. It was the period of especially studying the conflicts such as Taiwan Strait or non-recognized states, Transnistria, South Ossetia, and others. So we have, but we didn't actually pay attention to Ukraine so much, despite the fact that already Kuchma had published his book on that Ukraine is not Russia. We can talk about this as you like. So, and then finally, I just ended up studying regionalism. I was a fellow in different institutions, including in Singapore and the East-West Center in Washington. And now I've been studying since the first Ukraine crisis. I've been studying Russia-China, U.S. relations, because I've been teaching a lot of courses related with U.S. foreign policy, U.S. strategy. And actually, it's very interesting now to see the post-globalization type of comparative strategies of the great powers. What the EU is doing, what Russia is doing, India is doing, China, Japan. So probe of like studying Russia-Japan relations, for example, recently for Singapore. And I'm flying next week to Singapore to present on Trump's foreign policy. Which is like a $1 million question. I said, okay, you don't expect a lot from me, right? All right, so this is, so outline. I'll say a few words about the formation of this new kind of axis or alliance, quasi-alliance, or they call this CRINC, China, Russia, Iran, North Korea. So that's not me coining this, and also tribalization of the international order, what is happening now. It's not the normal bipolarization. It's not the conventional multipolarization. So we can also discuss this, since I heard that there are many students here interested in this. So about Cold War 2.0, we just say a few words about this. We'll try to explain what new type of strategic partnership is. Right? Lyle Goldstein, who is now director of the Asia Desk at Defense Priorities, and myself have finished writing a book, which is the maritime dimensions, implications of the Cold War 2.0 and the Russia-China collaboration. So we label this type of partnership as a quasi-alliance. Not us invented this, but we tried to analyze the new environment and new challenges and so-called new reality. What do they mean when Chinese Xi and Putin say new reality, right? And then I will elaborate a little bit on the role of China, China's narratives, China's global vision, and how it affects, it determines, I would say, the joint position of both China and Russia, despite the fact that Russia tries to, look more or less independent from China. But in fact, if you read Chinese documents, sometimes you just like close the title, and it looks like Lavrov was saying this. So it was like something very, very similar. And then I will lay out maybe 4 or 5 tools, important tools to reformat the Eurasian order, including North Korea, this recent pact with North Korea, and trying to make an assessment of policy recommendations. So so this is not a lot. It's one of the examples, actually, how actually like Joshua Keating tried to explain that we need to be concerned about this new axis. And yes, there's we have an impression that there is already kind of the interactions, the actions, the joint coordinated activities, making a cumulative effect on, including on American leadership and the so-called rules-based international order, right? So we are looking into the probably the emerging type of Cold War 2.0 model, but we have a few like examples of quotes from Josh Keating saying that yes, they are collaborating. They are being labeled as axis of upheaval, quarter of chaos, or simply the CRINCs. Russia's invasion of Ukraine helped cement the alliance, which is very interesting because few people expected this to actually to be happening. We have more than just 4 states. Jonathan Rao, whom I asked actually as a kind of what is this? The must-read article. So he says that it's more than 4 states. It's also some other, groupings, and like the Houthis and some, non-necessarily non-state actors, which might be collaborating with with this axis, including a very interesting story about the actually the relocation of the Russian base from Syria to Libya, and actual extension to helping and also fueling, I would say, the civil war in Sudan, and also the impact on Mali and all this all West Africa situation, including even Senegal. So I'm flying to Senegal in June at the conference. There will be a conference devoted to this kind of West Africa situation. So this is interesting. That's not only like the conventional grouping or conventional alliance, but it's a very interesting kind of I'll call later. It's not me. It's called ecosystem they are formulating a new ecosystem. I like this. I think it's one of the Russian experts create this ecosystem term. There are some other, like for example, Stefan Dale saying that global order is defined now by fragmentation and larger, smaller blocks, and also there's a Center for New American Security, Andrea Kendall Taylor said that they share a vision of spheres of influence, and that has been already quite for some time the big the subject to discuss whether we will be entering to the new Yalta type of agreement or we are returning to Helsinki. You probably have seen those articles and publications about this. So about just remind usually as a educator, so instructor, I remind the ABC of Cold War 1.0 because it's interesting because some people say that it might be another long piece with current Cold War 2.0, which is not the case. So because the first Cold War was there's very clear kind of spheres of control. They also agreed on some like bloc politics and also they were very clear blocks and the confrontation between the blocks driven by ideologies and ideological differences, very clear aspect and important aspect of nuclear deterrence, nuclear confrontation, and perceived equilibrium, I would say, right? So we have Pavel Luzin here, who's more a better expert on perceived equilibrium, right? Stability based on agreements, very important, which was agreement or negotiation-based, code of conduct between the two superpowers, and we're not seeing any signs of any code of conduct between at this point between, for example, the United States and China. Right, we can talk also about this. The role of proxy warfare, we can see some similarities with the Vietnam War, for example, and the Russia-Ukraine war. And the role of international institutions also was very important. So now we have a lot of those Cold War narratives. I just give a few examples. So about the two the Second Cold War, it's much more dangerous because there's a single apple pie, which is very interconnected global economy with the very important cyber and digital components. So you cannot just divide the internet now, just develop. You can somehow, and I participate in the Vitaly Club discussions about the nationalization of Russian internet, which is creating it's their own platform, digital platform. So probably that will be happening, but so far Microsoft is still maintaining some operations, but most of the Microsoft programs are not official, probably, which are spread in Russia, I believe. Right. So yes. So we don't see we see the formation of two poles, but they are not isolated. They are very much playing on the same field. Confrontational stability model, which was the core foundation for the stability, right, during the Cold War 1.0, now is under question. So it cannot secure confrontational stability just because of the numerous holders and developers of nuclear weapons, and very difficult to secure deterrence, as you all know. Bipolar construction will be short-lived. It's Ivan Timofeyev. Usually this is his and some others from the High School of Economics in Moscow. They just believe that bipolar construction will be short-lived and end up with direct conflict or war because it's so easy to get into, to be provoked. For example, we have the Baltic Sea, and I had Lyle Goldstein, whom I mentioned earlier, he's co-author of the book, which we finished. And he says, we just have now inserting maps into the text. And there is a map with the conflict zones, and he said, hopefully before we publish, we will not have a conflict zone in the Baltic, just between the Baltic NATO states and Russia, because now there is a very, very big risk of incident over there, right? So the war will be devastating. We see how the Ukraine war actually is laid out in evolving, and this is a horrible bloodshed for both parties. Due to new technologies, and explains why China and Russia try to accommodate to bipolarization by all means, but try to prevent this bipolarization from happening. There's a lot of discussions, debates about whether bipolar world might be the same way as this in, like, say, in 1970s would be secured, would be a guarantee for stability. But now this bipolarization cannot afford, because obviously we have one pole, one power center, which is US led, is almost established. And then it's a little bit fluid, but it's established. And their other pole is like, it's very asymmetric and not ready for like real consolidation and really, kind of making any threat or just being threatening or challenging the first pole. All right, so a few words about how we need to perceive Russia-China collaboration, this alliance in the quasi-alliance 21st century. They tried, both China and Russia had been trying for a long time to accommodate to the US-centered world order, right? We have seen lots of examples when both Russia and China, I don't have, if you ask me, I will tell you more details, right? So before 2012, I think that the biggest trigger, not because Putin returned and he was upset about Western interference in Bolotnaya protests, but also Xi Jinping, who actually was also infuriated by America's like pivot to Asia, right, and all those like developments in the U.S.-China relations. So it's not about this; it's about more or less global vision, especially after there was a Kosovo situation in 2005, right? But most important was the Arab Spring. So Arab Spring was like a trigger, and what actually helped them to develop a kind of coherent approach and coordinate approach was the belief that the 2008 financial crisis demonstrated the weakness of the West, right? We have seen not only 2008, but also the European debt crisis. A few people speak about this, but it was almost resolved like 2013. So it was like for a few years. There's a lot of buzz also within the European Union. And also there were some I used to teach European Union and including at Northeastern University grad school, called the end of the European construction. So, and lots of students actually had found lots of shortcomings in terms of European Union, and lots of people today predicting that European Union might be facing a very tough time. Right. So after the Ukraine crisis, everybody was surprised that actually China, despite openly not criticizing Russia, but not supporting actually Russia's annexation of the Crimea, but they started to kind of find some justification for this, right? And especially the Beijing, the Xi Jinping administration started to indirectly help economically Russia to avoid sanctions and to compensate sanctions. So about quasi-alliance, the formation of the major parameters happened by the year 2019. So that's what we need to understand, right? And that was based on the trust building. Remember, Putin likes to say to the Japanese that if we want to talk about the northern territories, it's just like, let's build trust first and sign peace treaty, and then we can talk about northern territories, right? So it's very important, despite the asymmetric potentials of the two parties. They were disappointed by their attempts, especially during Medvedev administration, to actually reach out and convert Russia into the Euro-Pacific power. Do you remember the kind of new Russia role? And I think Vyacheslav Nikonov was one of the, and my friend also Kirill Barsky used to be ambassador and special ambassador. After he returned from Thailand as ambassador, he was a special ambassador for kind of responsible for Eurasian integration. So there were lots of attempts, and also the Lavrov spoke every opportunity about collective leadership. At the same time, China tried to promote its new type of great power over the relationship between the great powers. But no result, right? And then the partnership of a new type was established. So new type seeks to challenge the new reality, seeks to challenge the West at the level of power, norms, and ideas. It's not just like squeezing out and not confronting the West directly, but it's a different. And Richard Sakwa formulated this in one of the books in a nice way. New type is and the principle of non-alignment, non-confrontation, non-targeting third parties. But it's better than an alliance because it's more flexible and fluid. So I will tell you more about this. So shared vision. What are the key? I found 5 premises of the kind of shared vision, the global vision, which they share. U.S. in decline thesis, the foster multipolarity and preserve the multilateral institutions with this center of the United Nations. Dismissing the imperative of a post-sovereign rules-based world order. You all know about this. They speak a lot about this. We can talk about the real differences in interpretations of UN principles, of the UN principles, such as self-determination, sovereignty, Westphalian sovereignty. We can talk about this, but there is we can look at them from like in a very kind of formal way, but need to actually analyze what they mean by sovereignty, for example. What is sovereignty, right? Self-perceived role of global peacemakers and advocates of economic globalization, just Russia and China. You've seen a lot of statements like this, aimed at making U.S. change its behavior by means of multilateralism, discursive power, discrediting U.S. before the global South. That's interesting. That what I liked, and actually Russia followed up, was that at some point China decided to challenge the international relations theory, the realist theory, that the behavior of global power, of global superpower, global power, or great power might be determined by the structural, drivers, right? So if like you structural realists, neorealists actually look at this this way. So they say, hey, let's divide the international system and the structural resources, which usually enhance the capacity of a great power and the great power's behavior. It could be different because it's like, if you're a big man, just like with lots of force and lots of power, you can just like behave and love kids and just implements justice. So that's how we consider ourselves. That's why it started from Jan Bidian from the early 2000s when they tried to explain the peaceful rise concept and then peaceful development. And then there's China as they dismissed the China as a responsible, Robert Zelek's China as a responsible stakeholder, but they said that we are responsible. So, but we want all great powers, they bear all their responsibility, similar responsibility before the mankind, including the United States. So it's kind of equality and responsibility. That is the democratization of international relations, which they have been speaking about a lot, right? So this is an interesting aspect. New reality. So they assert that after strengthening Russia, the West will begin to destroy China. And what we are looking at now was actually the members of the Trump team saying that, hey, we need to set some priorities and prioritize probably fighting against China, right? So that is an interesting development. So we can discuss this as well. They both believe that the U.S. has used Ukraine as battlefield gun, a battering gun against Russia, and Taiwan is being prepared to use against China. So that's there are interesting. I can give you reference like interviews on this. For China, Russia acts as a tough instrument of the dual containment against the dual pressure against both China and Russia. China's support of Putin is driven by its desire to preserve Russia as a counterweight to the U.S., which has been after 2008, as well as to rescue the Putin regime from collapse, since Putin's image in Russia has become part of the CPC's own legitimacy, right? They glorified Putin so much, so they wanted to actually look like Putin, and that's why you cannot dismiss Putin's image as a weak statesman, right? So they need to actually, fuel and this image of strong statement in China for their own domestic legitimacy. I presented at Zhejiang University once at the Conference on Legitimacy and Good Governance. So that was one of the points of discussion. While being unable to engage in direct bipolar rivalry with the United States, Moscow and Beijing seek to resist by weakening its dominance. I mentioned this. By what means? So first is the return to the spheres of influence logic, right? So I have a few examples how they actually emphasize in the joint communiques joint statements that, yes, they stand against attempt by external forces to undermine security stability in their common adjacent regions. Then there were some very important, especially the recent statement, joint statement that state special treatment of the nuclear powers, right? Applicable to nuclear powers in the international system, pointing to the danger of any external interference to the neighboring areas adjacent to the nuclear states. And that was May 2024. We probably have seen in my blog op-ed in Norwich University that I specifically pointed to this, that Russian Chinese leaders advocate for a special status for nuclear powers, which should refrain from infringing on each other's vital interests through the expansion of military alliances and coalitions and the creation of military bridgeheads close to the borders of other nuclear powers. So Russians are very excited now about Trump. That Trump wants to make Canada the next state of the United States and also occupy Mexico, maybe. So say, oh, this is exactly this. So we are talking about spheres of influence. Marco Rubio spoke about multipolarity and probably spheres of influence, and that the countries need to pay attention to their national interests. And each country has the right to actually exercise their national interests. So now here we go. We just like entering probably this period. This new ecosystem. New ecosystem is that mostly based on the idea of BRICS platforms and different other groupings, not necessarily those. Like especially I like the idea of the revamp or like rejuvenated the Caspian region, condominium with Iran, especially after they signed this the agreement, the partnership, strategic partnership agreement with Iran recently. So that is something which you need to actually pay attention to. And also BRICS, because the BRICS is not anti-Western, as they emphasized many times, but it provides some room for maneuver for those who prefer to avoid direct interactions with the West. Interesting, right? And Fyodor Lukyanov liked this idea that he, I think, labeled the ecosystem. So I think he learned from German Gref, who loves to develop ecosystems, the umbrella of Sberbank. So probably those like ecosystems so popular now in Russia. So everybody speaks about the ecosystem. So Lukyanov said that, yeah, this is how to embrace the new and very diverse members, flexibility and situational response. Situational response. Does it look like a little bit of transactionalism, transactional foreign policy? And there are a lot of now debates, including, I think, Dan Dresner published something on this recently, and Foreign Policy magazine discussing very much the transactional nature of the benefits. The Cato Institution actually published something about the benefits of transactionalism for the United States. So this is interesting. We can also talk about this. So it's not just like simple alliances in the postmodern era, but they are unions based on interests, but allow double, triple, and more membership, taking into account the positions of sovereign national states, allowing, even assuming the multi-vector nature of their foreign policies. At the same time, they criticize, for example, Kazakhstan for too much multi-vectorialism. Right, so so they enable them, but Kazakhstan didn't join BRICS, obviously, right? So at the same time, we see that as kind of another version of multi-vector strategy. So it's precisely these formations from BRICS to the Indo-Pacific Island Cooperation Forum that are showing an active interest in the global development. So offering projects and services a la carte. So I like this a la carte services. New exclusive security model. That's what I mentioned in my announcement, which is this. This is absolutely the development of Xi Jinping's earlier thought about CICA, the Conference on Comprehensive, comprehensive mutual, confidence measures in Eurasia. They originally came from Kazakhstan, from Nazarbayev, and then Xi Jinping decided to implement this, and then America was actually not happy about this when Xi Jinping said that Asia for the Asians, excuse me, and then Kurt Campbell started to develop this new deterrence, expanded deterrence initiative in the Asia Pacific. which is ongoing and going now, right? So now it's in the Indo-Pacific. So that so we see some quotes saying that the new architecture nevertheless is intended to force external actors to curtail their hegemony across the continent. We see that Beijing have endorsed the Putin administration's recent concept of the Eurasian architecture, security architecture, as an alternative to the existing one based on US guarantees, right? So because they try to explain that all, if you gotten engaged to the under the US umbrella, you are in trouble, right? So you just you are provoked into the conflict with someone else. That's why just guys come over, including European Union. Yeah, you wanna live in peace? Just come talk with us, right? In the Asia Pacific, not only South Asia, but also Japan and South Korea. And my former student is ambassador to South Korea, so George Zinoviev, and he's trying to actually re-engage South Korea at this point, right? So we had a lot of examples when Lavrov and Wang Yi tried to dismiss the validity of the transatlantic security, formula, especially given the fact that the NATO is becoming a global NATO, and we have seen some reactions from Russia and China on the Asianization of NATO in new role of the NATO in the Asia Pacific, right? So, and as I said, that's just an invitation. Okay, we want to talk about security. We can just establish because all those European mechanisms of security and transatlantic mechanisms, they only bring about disaster and wars, right? That's what they say. Battle for the global South. Yeah, they trying to portray themselves as providers of public goods in the security sphere. We are seeing that absolutely unprecedented evolution and the new roles of Russia and China. Just China is less mentioned in West Africa, but China is there, right? And China is very supportive of those initiatives. Anti-colonialism rhetoric, which is we need to consolidate all the nations in the global South to fight against neoliberal neocolonialism. So and that's even the conferences will be convened in the near future on this, not only on inter-civilizational dialogue, but also about how to actually support the new fighting against neocolonialism. Logistics and transportation corridors, we can look into this in different parts of the world and global South. New values and norms that within the framework of BRICS, which would prioritize the values and interests of the developing world. And China and Russia have been major claimants of norm forming and rule-making activities over the period since the Arab Spring through the crisis over Ukraine and recent waves of economic nationalism, protectionism, and sovereignty revivalism. So yeah, so they are trying to actually change the agenda, but also develop new vocabulary and new these. This is one of the examples, for example, how they try to use the north-south transportation corridor to kind of avoid Europe and show to Europe that we can live without you, which if we develop through Azerbaijan and Iran and go down to India Ocean and supply goods from the northern part, especially Russia and probably China, if they use the northern route to the Indian Ocean, and that might actually help us, safe and be more safe in terms of the Malacca Strait. Solving Malacca Strait dilemma in Southeast Asia, where the U.S. 7th Fleet is more on control, and here we can ally with the Houthis and the Red Sea, and that will be a very good setup. Some people say that this formula is a little bit against the China's Belt and Road Initiative. It's a very interesting topic. I've just finished a chapter for Harvard University Press on Russia and BRI, right? How Russia has been evolving, perceiving BRI, and why Russia actually ended up being out of the BRI, right? So Russia is out of the BRI, so it's not part of BRI. It's obviously they try to speak and sign something on the integration of integrations, like Eurasian Economic Union / BRI collaboration, but Russia is playing its own game, including this game related with India, involvement of India and maybe Pakistan. Okay, North Korea, so I promised. say something on North Korea. So North Korea, yes, there is a new pact, and it's part of the multipolarity discourse, including secure strategic stability, international justice. That's what is mentioned in this document that Putin signed with Kim. And also against hegemonic intent to build a unipolar world and global neocolonial dictatorship. It has just restored the provision of the earlier treaty on the 1960s, and it contains some, articles which usually people don't pay attention to, like non-agreement with the third party. Okay, joint activities strengthen defense capabilities in the interest of preventing war. Article 8. Parties interact to jointly confront growing challenges and threats in areas of strategic importance. Article 9. 9. Foster economic cooperation. So I would say that probably the ability of Chinese to provide technologies and Russians to provide some maybe engineers and also place orders in North Korean plants and factories might really just create the new economic foundation for the future, access of future alignment between the three, and including Iran and including Belarus. So we could speak about not only Quartet, but it may be the 5 countries. All right, if we have more. We'll see. Aim to foster economic cooperation and pledge to jointly counter sanctions. And also my former student Asmolov, who's a big expert on North Korea, said it doesn't intend to strengthen DPRK's offensive capabilities against South Korea, focusing on defense. But I would say that this is a new kind of revision, a new version of the nuclear deterrence mechanism, because what happened was that Putin and Karaganov and others realized that there is not enough confidence in Russia's ability to use nuclear weapons and exercise nuclear deterrence. But Russia is possessing the material, tools to exercise nuclear deterrence, but is lacking psychological preparedness to exercise nuclear deterrence. So what was missing? It was a North Korean determination. So it was Kim's kind of irrational style and his psychological preparedness to destroy the West and the United States was very useful for Russia to actually merge the material capabilities of Russia and psychological preparedness of North Korea. And North Korea was missing some material capabilities. So it was such a nice kind of, I would say, amalgamated entity, which actually creates this complementary deterrence mechanism. Yeah, I like also the idea of North Korea as a dark chamber, which is like one of the Russian military experts was saying, Shurigin, maybe part of those, reads some of his publications, who says that, North Korea could be dark chamber where we can develop new weapons and nobody will know about, because nobody has access to there, and just like we can send engineers, we can develop some joint teams, something like this. All right, and we are under sanctions, they are under sanctions, so what? What will happen next? China, there's a big question about whether China approves this or not. China tries to show that, we are absolutely disapproval because North Korea-Russia alliance is like disturbing, and then creates more opportunities and excuses for the United States to enhance its alliance with South Korea and Japan, and even deploy some weapons and missiles. But what actually experts in Russia are saying that, and in China informally, that they will be doing this even without this. So they try in the propaganda. If you go to the Baidu blogs and see all those blogs, how there's a very interesting way of delivering messages and educating their population, but they have a lot of blogs and they're very strange people, mostly maybe military and security people under the pretending being like normal citizens, and also taking very weird names for themselves. So it's like very interesting that they publish those blogs officially, and they just discuss this. And so they say, we're so much concerned about Russia, North Korea alliance. But in fact, it's like in the bottom of the heart, they just appreciate this. That's absolutely. Some people in Russia even saying that by allying with North Korea, actually, Russia has neutralize the North Korean factor in the as a stick or as a platform in the U.S.-China confrontation. So now U.S. cannot use easily the North Korean factor by triggering something against China, right? Because now it's under the Russian kind of protection or security umbrella. We can discuss this. So some people say us speaking about this. All right, so these are the Western concepts, which are misleading propositions. It's a pact between the two pariah states. It is a master plan to signal others about time to start talking. Chinese leaders are concerned about the potential loss of influence over North Korea. No, they are not. So red is my comments on this. Right? Putin is willing to help improve North Korea's WMD. Not necessarily. Kim can now rely on Bulava, on the Russian, WMD. Russia no longer treats Japan and South Korea as more important than the North. This is done exactly to draw their attention. And I was in Seoul after just this treaty was signed, 2 days after it was signed on June 20th, 21st. And there was a lot of conversation and questions about this. So this is part of my thinking on the situation. There is some cringing between the Russian elite asking themselves if they really want to be Kim Jong-un's dearest friend. Not anymore. We've seen, if you've observed this, we've seen the absolute transformation of the Russian commentators from saying, "Oh, North Korea, they have bad food, or they leave like a concentration camp," and now they say, "Oh, they're just like an exemplary nation of like survival and resilience." So this is us, should be us, right? Not necessarily like eating the same, but should be us. This should be us. So this is something like this. I've had a lot of quotes like this. Kim is having Putin when he needs him. No, it's a win-win for them. There is one publication by Sue Terry. The Chinese are conflicted. Beijing is concerned about regional power shift, and it is happening even without that pact. That's what I was trying to say. There is another quote: "The kind of close cooperation between North Korea and Russia that we are witnessing right now will not last once the war subsides." Read between the lines. So this is not because the real objective is different. It's not just like a la carte alliance or a la carte like marriage of convenience. It's a little bit different. And also there's another one. Russia will become an official partner to reduce dependency from China and South Korea. Learn to see beyond the tip of the iceberg. Right? Look at Chinese real intentions and how they look on this. So we can discuss this as well. So a couple of remarks and a couple of policy concerns, right? China-Russia quasi-alliance, a new form of hybrid power politics, right? Better than an alliance because it's more flexible. You can improve. It's like strategic ambiguity, right? So for America, strategic ambiguity on Taiwan was absolutely a beneficial thing, right? So now China and Russia are having strategic ambiguities. Sometimes they have an impression that they are all going their own paths and ways and don't want to interact with each other. So they could perform like a kind of divorce, but the next day could perform another remarriage, right? So that is very convenient, right? At the same time, they could do something quietly without like necessarily sticking to the letter of the agreements, right? So that's why in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, people told me that sometimes Chinese top officials would call 3 a.m. in the morning. Say, hey, Alexei, just there's something happening. So can you just talk with us about this now? Driven by interest, so a new reality interpreted by Beijing and Moscow is a long battle against Western domination. Driven by interest, ideologies, narratives, shared norms and values, very much motivated by domestic legitimacy problems, right? Because it is in many countries the foreign policy exposure, the problem of status. This Larson book about quest for status, Larson and Shevchenko book. So they all have very important implications for their domestic legitimacy, including Putin's team legitimacy, because they have so many weak Achilles heels on the domestic arena. So they want to look cool before their population, including in China and Russia. The China is different in China. That in China there is a much more middle class. It's like up to 300 million strong middle class. So they don't want to leave an impression. I mean, the party, Chinese Communist Party, leave an impression that the conditions or living standards for middle class are going down because of their bad foreign policies. In Russia, only a few, like maybe 10% of the population suffering from Putin's banned out Western foreign policies. The rest of the population is becoming even some business consultant. Sometimes I teach online Chinese for those enthusiasts on Sundays, which is many of them in Russia, some of them London, but all Russian speaking. And I noticed that some of the pretty famous business consultants who had long been associated with the so-called liberals, they are wearing T-shirts with the Lavrov here. So this is like, wow. I said, is it Putin? Oh, it's the Lavrov. So it's lots of people became very patriotic and because of the situation. So I would say that the Russian elites, lots of elite groups are very consolidated now. And responding to Western narrative of the global NATO, linking the Euro-Atlantic and Indo-Pacific theaters. So Russia is doing the same. So this Eurasian architecture, security architecture is exactly just like to offset the impact of the this linkage between the Eurasian and European and also Indo-Pacific theaters. Yes, there is a condominium because they agreed on the division of labor, right? Jointly setting up goals and coordinating strategies. As I said, 3 o'clock in the morning, adjustment of positions, interests, and trying to find a consensus and bargaining. They do bargaining a lot, right? So probably they enjoy it. I've heard from some Russian sinologists involved into this. It's like it's exciting, and they are holding a huge conference at HSC School of Economics on the 26th, 27th on Asia, including Russia-Japan relations, Russia-Southeast Asia relations, Russia-China relations. Those who are interested, I can give you the links because I don't think they're invited openly, but some sessions will be online. So if you're interested, especially those who speak Russian, because they will definitely not speak English over there. I said, invite me. They said, we are not inviting Americans, sorry. I said, no, but you can speak, you can participate in the roundtable.
This is the Faculty of World Economy and International Relations.
Yes.
Anastasia Likhacheva.
Yeah. And there's, no, she's okay. But, and they invite me online. Said, okay, you can, don't come, but you can participate in the roundtable discussing this along with others. But I said, did you invite Maslov? He said no, they have some tensions between Maslov and Karaganov. So it's very interesting.
But Karaganov will be there.
Karaganov is the founding father. Yes. Right? So China asserts a global position, leadership roles, and generates structural impulses. Russia seems to be accommodative to understand Russia's actions. As I said, one should carefully read Chinese concepts. Right, so that's the reality. It's not a vassal relationship, as our friend who now is director of the Carnegie in Berlin.
Alexander Gabuev.
Yeah, Gabuev used to say that, oh, this is a vassal, like boss and vassal or patron vassal relationship. It's not the case, but it's they really. In Russia, they really benefit from what China is trying to do, but China is not is trying to delegate the kind of more risky job for Russia to do. Okay. So a couple of implications for the U.S. since we are in the U.S. Right? So a realignment between Russia and DPRK is not an ad hoc response to U.S. actions and a long game aimed at eventual nullification of Washington's extended deterrence efforts. Right? This creates incentives for regional actors to reconsider their staunch commitment to the U.S.-centered alliance system and put themselves positioned of dependency from the U.S. security umbrella, bearing the risk of being involved into a conflict with China or Russia, now enhanced by the unpredictable North Korea. That's what I sensed in South Korea, that there were, and also were some interactions I met with some people and visitors from South Korea different think tanks at Harvard, and they interviewed Bob Ross, And they saw me saying, oh, can we interview you? So, and they interviewed me. So we talked a lot about, like 2 hours, talked a lot about South Korean concerns, how actually South Korea doesn't want to be provoked to actually go defend Taiwan. So that's what the case. So that is good thing for actually those Russian and Chinese diplomats to explain to South Koreans, don't get yourself into trouble, right? You are too close to us, from us. So master plan to alternate the US centralized system with the universal Eurasian security architecture might sideline the United States in the process of regional engagement, especially if China and Russia demonstrate their ability to improve defensive capabilities and productive synergy and their readiness to strike deals with regional communities, especially in the Southeast Asia. And they use a lot of the BRICS mechanisms. Now we've seen Indonesia, right, joining, so they might be very, very important. Right? And you just like, I'm writing now another chapter on US future strategy in Southeast Asia, because I was writing on Biden administration's strategy in Southeast Asia. Now it's too late to publish, so I have to update this and see what Trump actually will be thinking about this with his transactionalism. So I hope to learn more from Singaporeans next week. And US need to thoroughly and adequately analyze the limitations of mutual military assistance with the framework of the pact. And finally, foreign policy concerns. As Ravi Agarwal from the Policy magazine noted, Trump's return will only accelerate the move toward a more transactional global system. His rhetoric on Greenland, Panama, an extreme hardball approach to an immigration dispute with Colombia suggests his views of spheres of influence, right, might parallel Russia and China in some ways. Eugene Rumor said from Carnegie, critical of the access concept. In order to deal with these countries effectively, the threats they pose to us, I think we need to look at them in a more disaggregated manner, right? So now Russians hope that actually the Trump team is reaching out to them to kind of court Russia again, recourt Russia. John Bolton failed at some point, and now they're probably using some other very heavy waiters to actually engage Russia. Probably the Kremlin will somehow find some sort of consensus because they're suffering a lot from this war, and so they need to finish it. It is an American initiative. We are going to put the time, the treasure, the resources that we need into the Pacific right now badly. Mike Waltz, right, said in a recent interview. America should face the reality and learn how to manage multipolarity. This is Lyle Goldstein said this, and we just try to formulate in our book. And Marco Rubio, multipolarity in the spheres of influence. Thank you very much. It's my pleasure. Thank you so much.
Okay, so I could start off so that I could grab a sandwich after. First, thank you for your talk. It was very insightful. And I specifically want to know more about the Caucasus and their role in the China-Russia axis, especially given that Georgia is increasingly wanting EU membership. Armenia actually last week has voted in favor of EU membership, and we've seen between Armenia and Azerbaijan war, there is US and EU influence within the war. So do you see this as a potential problem for Russia and China in their alliance and in their future of their coalition? And if so, what are the implications?
Well, and you didn't mention Iran, which is right there, but I
Yes.
think Georgia's EU membership right now is in question. But Vitaly, I'll let you respond.
So I would say that for those smaller states, it's now becoming very challenging to develop relationship with Russia, because Russia's dealing with Russia has become toxic from the many perspectives. So they could make like lip service that we are friendly with Russia, we'll collaborate with Russia, part of the Eurasian Economic Union. There were some new hopes that the CSTO would probably be rearranged or be rejuvenated somehow. But they obviously believe that they don't want to lose they benefit also from providing financial services for the Russian citizens. A lot of Russian citizens own cards, banking cards in Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Uzbekistan, mostly Kazakhstan. Right, so they benefit from this, and also in Georgia, right? So like lots of businesses moved to Georgia. I had an impression a long time ago. I met with the Charge d'Affaires of Georgia in Washington, maybe 4 years ago. Now he moved to business, so he just like quit, I think, foreign service. He was a very interesting man. It was like early after the beginning of the war. It was like so it was 3 years ago, probably in summer, in June 2022. I had a lunch with him. We had a nice conversation. So at that point, I have an impression that actually Georgia was not so much anti-Russian. It was very interesting because I expected from him to really be very critical of Russia, especially he said that we have a really psychological hardship to forgive Russia for this 2008 invasion and aggression against us. And actually we are having trouble how to perceive those like visitors from Russia. We have like 1 million, like 300,000, I forgot the number. But those like folks who actually moved to Georgia and they settled down in Georgia and they're doing their businesses. So how to treat them? Because it's interesting that just like nobody escaped from Russia when they started special operation in Georgia. So now, but there are so many people escaped from Russia. They started a special operation in Ukraine, right? So they were like, facing a dilemma: how to treat the Russians, But at the same time, they understand probably that they don't need to fully rely on this Euro integration thing or like reliance on the US because here it's your neighborhood. You are so far away from them. Right, so many of them are trying to weigh, and even Armenians don't want to fully split with Russia, despite the fact that they all very much have very little hopes about the future of Russia-Armenian relations. But now we've seen the activation of diplomatic exchange between Russia and Armenia. So especially given the new administration in the United States, so probably. And given some potential splits and potential uncertainties in terms of European Union and European Union's attitudes to Armenia, so we'll see. But for small states, it's very challenging. We need to mention Kyrgyzstan. It's a big headache. The whole situation. Kazakhstan is also headaches because they could be criticized. Even Azerbaijan. So you see, he's been accused now of like being provoked by this incident with the airplane, and there's a kind of some people in Russia saying that there was like MI6 inspired this incident so that Azerbaijan would be infuriated by this and they just like split the relationship between. They have been already almost done with this north-south corridor through Azerbaijan, so now they are having trouble to actually link Azerbaijan to this Russia-Iranian,
And Russia's funding
bridge. So it's hard to say, but I believe that they have to continue to implement this multi-vector policies. And by the way, Chinese influence in Georgia is huge, in Armenia. So China has invested very heavily into the South Caucasus. So I believe that sometimes when Russia cannot be exposed, China could call them at 3 a.m. in the morning and Russia say, hey, you know what? We are helping you within Far East, but can you just help us in Georgia or like in Armenia? And they could actually help facilitate somehow Russia's activities in these southern Caucasus regions.
Very interesting. Thank you so much. And then you can open it up to other questions.
I was wondering if you could talk about how you saw the quasi-alliance between China and Russia playing out in the Arctic and what you think the goals might be there and sort of continuing that alliance, or if you think that's more of a separate.
We all remember that the Arctic had been like a very kind of sensitive issue, including in the relationship between Russia and China. But probably in terms of the evolution and development of equal partnership, the Arctic remains one of the best examples of a couple of which China and Russia can equally exploit and utilize. And if you have heard, now the collaboration in the Arctic with China has become as part of the Russia's involvement, Russian involvement completely. So now instead of so Russia cannot become this like full-fledged, appendage of the Chinese Green Belt and Road Initiative. But so Russia's idea, and Putin himself mentioned this, I think during the Valdai Forum, forget which one, maybe 2022, mentioned this as saying that, hey, we can actually now even more be more engaged with the Chinese Green by developing a relationship between us and Russian collaboration on the northern route. So and also given the new challenges and in terms of Greenland and also China is being squeezed away, ousted from Greenland because China had also plans on the Arctic. So probably China and Russia will become even more coordinated, including the development of port logistics along the northern route. So and they have met a few times. I probably will meet again about how to counterbalance the Americas / NATO deeper engagement into the Arctic. So the Arctic might be another point of confrontation, especially given the fact that Russia considers half of the Arctic Ocean as the territorial waters, and America considers it's an international navigation, international open waters, right? So China used to be supportive of the American perspective. Now China stopped being openly speaking about the freedom of navigation because of the South China Sea. They don't want to support American in the Arctic, despite the fact that we benefit from this, but at the same time not supporting America's freedom of navigation in the South China Sea, but in Taiwan Strait. So China is having trouble in terms of how to justify its position, but it's another it's very good, very promising sphere for collaboration.
Thank you very much for the brilliant presentation. But what I saw a lot of mutual diplomatic rhetoric in Russia, China, North Korea, some expert statements. And I perfectly know what Fyodor Lukyanov says, what Karaganov says, Dmitry Trenin says, or Vasily Kashin, or all these guys. But what I don't see, I do not see a material basis for cooperation. Because when Russia tried to modernize itself with cooperation with Europe, with the United States, it established a lot of joint projects. There were joint ventures. There were European factories in Russia, American factories in Russia. There were joint master programs between Russian universities, European universities, American universities. There was even a joint master program between Tomsk Technical University and Taiwanese University. But what's about material basis for cooperation with China and with North Korea?
It was me who bringing those Taiwanese technical university people to sign an agreement with Tomsk.
Oh.
So yeah, I was flying with them. It was 2004. It was 2005 in spring. Yes. Those things, which I was worked in Taiwan. I was teaching at that Fenjia University. So George Zinoviev, who's an ambassador now in Seoul, was the deputy ambassador, deputy director of the representative office of Russia in Taiwan. So he helped us to connect with Tomsk, and the Tomsk people were very enthusiastic. So we traveled to Novosibirsk and Tomsk, and it was a great visit. So we signed agreements, and it was really, including the lab. They even set up a lab, technical labs in Fenjia University. And I was surprised that really it was realized or implemented. So that's interesting. All those, we need to look at for example, the size of the Russian-Chinese trade this year. So last year was common. Yeah, so it was absolutely record. absolute record. Let alone if we don't count, we are not counting the indirect sales through Turkey, through Kyrgyzstan, because those like the trade between China and these countries helping to avoid sanctions skyrocketed. So we cannot speak about concrete digits and material things because they are all trying to be more kind of concealed, right? Even with Japan, I was writing a paper on Japan, and I noticed that Russia-Japan trade is about 8 billion. And then I looked into the Japanese statistics, and they show that it was 23 billion, which is almost restoring the previous levels of trade. So I was confused. I said, okay, what should I write about? That's why I'm still thinking about how to explain this because it's a policy paper for the Singapore government. So they said, hey, it's called background briefing. So I'm very doubtful. So this is one thing. Second thing is nobody, except for those who monitor from the satellites, how many actually cars and trains and the vessels actually cross the North Korean Russian border, right? You know all those like websites. They trying to calculate how much of the stuff they purchase from North Korea. They see that lots of traffic going to North Korea, and lots of traffic going to North Korea from China through Russia. So China supplies something to Russia. Russia supplies maybe uranium or something like this. Go to North Korea. North Korea doing final project. Final project goes back to. So nobody cannot say. Nobody can speak about this. Nobody, including my former. He was the secretary of the Young Communist League, my institution, who is now the press secretary of Putin, right? With the mustache, this gentleman, right? So he would never say. So yes, there is no joint ventures like publicly opened and very much publicized between China and Russia. But we all know, for example, that Russia since 2014, China has since 2014 has established some production lines, including robotics in Russia. So they are not supplying directly, but they have supplied machinery, lots of machinery from China. Now it used to be Taiwanese machinery, which I also helped when I was in Taiwan. The Russians to reach out and they rearmed the whole like Tula military production plants with the Taiwanese machinery, right? Now they cannot, so they kind of stopped only supplying Taiwanese machinery, but already Chinese had stolen most of the technologies. So they are producing very nice machinery, which they supplied to the United States. But they cannot supply simultaneously to the United States and Russia because the United States would stop buying from them. So they find ways how to actually deliver machinery to Russia. And if you go to, like, for example, what is this guy's name? Grudinin, right? He's a collective farm, Leninsky, right?
Yeah.
So they lend part of the land for the production lines with a very high sophisticated production using the Chinese machinery, Chinese technologies. So they do, but they're doing quietly and they try not to be exposed, right? So they prefer maybe doing these things through South Ossetia, right? So South Ossetians would go and establish a company and deliver something to Russia. But because China doesn't want to, especially after the 2014 and especially after 2022, be exposed too much. So yes, there is a not so impressive collaboration, but China is especially buying more and more oil from Russia because China wants to help the Russian financial system.
If you're on the ground now in Beijing, which I was back home this winter, one of my best friends now is doing exchange program in NGU. And then now a lot of the Chinese kids in middle school, usually most people choose English back in my days, but now you have like a quarter of kids begin to learn Russian. And if you go to Chinese college campuses, you see all the foreign looking students, and then half of them come from Russia or Serbia. So the exchange of people is happening a lot.
Oh, yeah, but
Yeah.
we may compare the statistics. How many Chinese students are here in the United States? How many of them
I see.
are in Europe? How many of them are in Russia? And how many Russian students are here, Europe, or in China. So there are still a lot of imbalances, as I presume. And Vitaly mentioned advanced Chinese machine tools, but Hans Lazar's does not supply its machinery in Russia or through other countries into Russia after 2022. They are very careful about this. But some smaller companies, less advanced than Hans Lazar's, they may supply something, or they may supply components for the Russia domestic-made machine tools. But I try not to overestimate this budget, because for me it's not quasi-aliens. It's mostly like a Russian dependency on China, and that's it.
Well, and perhaps the other way to frame this, and I've heard this from multiple experts, Russia no longer has a significant stake in the global economy because it has been isolated from the West after especially 2022. China still does. China's primary trade partner is the United States. And of course, China trades substantially with the European Union. And so in that sense, Russian and Chinese interests, still are different, right? Russia is a kind of major disruptor when it comes to the global economic order. China, I think, is relatively happy, despite the emerging trade war with the United States, to keep the status quo.
But if you look into the U.S. National Security Strategy 2022 and other like national intelligence publications, U.S. national intelligence publications, especially threat assessment, they consider like China as a much more existential threat for the United States than Russia. Russia is a rogue state. If you look into the Rand Corporation reports, Russia is a rogue state. The rogue state, kind of spoiler, right? Disturbant. And China is a existential because it's a systemic threat. And I agree in this case, as I try to hint on this, that Russia is following up because Russia is no choice, right? But follow up and be in them like in this flow, what actually China is doing. But Russia's role is very specific. That's why I spoke about division of labor. Russia's role is like exactly this hooligan who actually goes and starts doing something which is not very nice. Whereas China might come over and say, just come down. So you see to the West that we are like keeping them responsible, accountable, right? So something like this. Yeah.
Well, I guess, as a follow-up question, your predictions about this Cold War 2.0, as the China, Russia, North Korea, Iran axis becomes solidified and entrenched, does Russia have any incentives for normalization of relations with the West? Put aside the Russia-Ukraine war, which Trump has promised to resolve in the coming months. Will the Cold War 2.0 persist, or as some experts, like I'm thinking Elbridge Colby, who is now going to be, Deputy Secretary of Defense for Policy Planning, has said, can we try to pull Russia away from China?
I'll tell you one secret. All five of them, Belarus, North Korea, Iran, Russia, they all love to restore relations with the West, right? So what they're doing is that they are doing this just not because they are absolutely naturally born killers, right? But they're doing this because they're desperate about how to actually, maintain this grouping and deliver a message, like using this cumulative effect. Sometimes collaborating with some weird people such as Houthis and promising to provide weapons to them, like Granite or whatever, this Bastion, right? So to destroy there are lots of speculations in Russia. And the cartoons how U.S. aircraft carriers is being sunk by the Houthis, right, wearing flip-flops. right? So this is something which is everybody wants to restore relations, so they don't consider themselves as the future challengers because it's very hard to compare, right? The consolidated potential and might of the West, and now they have really like cold feet and cold hands when they think happen in 5 years, when the West will re-establish itself and restore its production capabilities in terms of military production. So that will be absolutely impossible for those countries, even if they combine their potential, to actually, confront and balance against them. So they are looking for some possibilities to change the rules of the game so that they will be included. That's why they're doing these things, BRICS and all the other things, and all operations which the West doesn't like many regions. But they're doing this to maybe kind of, let's say this is kind of a new type of signaling. It's a new type of hybrid warfare, which is the goal of any war, any conflict is to get to some settlement, right? So, and the settlement depends on how smart you are in terms of getting along this conflict, escalating, de-escalating, escalating, and then getting to some sort of point when the other party considers her position as like too costly. Like, for example, now there is a lot of debates about to what extent support for Ukraine, but they will not be able to stop supporting Ukraine because it undermines the American credibility, right? So they will continue somehow support Ukraine and including military and arms supplies. It's very hard to undo, right? But in terms of some sort of arrangement with Russia and some sort of finding some tit for tat or like trade-offs with Russia, it might happen, right? Including Iran, might happen, including maybe if Trump visits Kim again in Pyongyang, there might be. I'm going to Singapore next week. There's a group of enthusiasts who facilitated the Trump-Kim summit in Singapore, and including Vietnamese. They facilitated in Hanoi, right? And these people, and there was a former Swedish ambassador, right? He's a good drinker of whiskey, right? So he just like is there as a part-time. He was trying to become a member of the parliament, but he failed. So he returned to Singapore now doing this because he's very close to Kim. Somehow he's real. I don't know why, but him and his court, his team likes this guy. I don't know why. Because maybe he's a representative of a neutral country. I don't know. But he facilitated the initial arrangement between the Americans and him. So they are trying to do this, and they consider this as a possibility.
I think we have time for one more question.
We can collect, it looks like there are just two, right?
Okay.
So we can take them both.
Thank you for being here. I'm Ling Yuan from Beijing. I'm planning on working on the thesis now between China and EU, strategy and relationship. So when I look at the situation now, it looks like obviously EU has its own problem. It has division within its union. You have the states in the east, which includes Hungary, Bulgaria. My question would be, how do you see, if you know that, do you see any of EU's plan now in terms of strategy in adopting to this new quasi alliance? Especially, I was just watching Alice Vidal's interview in which she stated that if it happens, if she has power, they will restore Russian gas directly back into Europe. So how do you see European Union navigating through this? So do they talk to the Russians? Do they talk to the Chinese? Like, what kind of strategy do you see now in terms of their dialogue?
Yeah, I think you need to look into the divergence between the Brussels bureaucracy and the national governments. Because now is the biggest issue for the EU has been for a long time, has been this, just like how to actually need to rely on decision making in Brussels. Very important for our national interests in a particular member state, right? So because we all know about this legitimacy crisis, the lack of legitimacy of the bureaucracy, which is not voted for, right, in the EU. So the EU is like very questionable in terms of democratization, right? And you want to take a look at Ivan Krastev when we invited him, right? Ivan Krastev's publications about the EU and the internal tensions, political tensions within the EU. So what I think is happening is that Russia and China has been for a long time trying to actually engage with the EU because since the bombing of Yugoslavia, since the beginning of this global war on terror during the George W. Bush administration, especially in Putin's team, started to develop one, probably with the help of Karaganov and Nikonov, started to develop this so-called Eurocentric initiative, promote Eurocentrism, saying that Europe was a good guy, good cop, and the United States was a bad cop. So right. So there is a bad West and good West. So good West is Europe, bad West was the United States, right? After bombing Yugoslavia and the beginning of this neoconservative course, foreign policy course, right? Especially after the Iraqi campaign. So, this is absolutely bad West. So they tried to re-engage the EU for a long time, right? Then I remember this 16 plus China plus the Central and Eastern European format I was presenting and the Beijing Europe Institute of European Studies. Trying to explain to the heads of the think tanks from the 16 European countries how to understand China. I don't know why they invited me, but maybe I was studying this. So what is happening now is like they all, by all means, are trying to re-engage with you, right? And they see that on the bureaucratic level, Brussels level, it's very hard to do so because there are some rules of bureaucratic machine and bureaucratic decision making, very ideological, very kind of anti-China, like so-called authoritarian. Right? So what are they looking for? Is they're looking for the weak link within the EU because they analyze both in Russia and China, analyze what's happening in the EU. We're trying to engage with some of the countries, like we mentioned, Bulgaria, or maybe Romania, maybe the Slovakia, right, and Hungary. So there is already quite a few potential candidates which might become a weak link. And if you set a precedent, they might be really very much influential for other countries. Because honestly, for example, Germany is not unhappy about this disruption of ties with and the limitations in terms of supplies to China, and that is one of the issues, right? You see the German chancellor just visited China in the Ukrainian crisis. There were a lot of debates about how to improve with the key states, Germany and France. Germany and France is like pivotal. It's very hard, but it might be they need to monitor what is going on between Trump and France and Trump and Germany, right? So the new chancellor probably, right? And if you look into this, you will see to what extent China and Russia might utilize this.
Thank you.
I can save my question for after since we're a bit over. I'll ask you privately after.
Awesome. Thanks. All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.